Hi, I am filming my first sit-down booktube video, so please bear with me if it's a little bit awkward. I'm trying my best, but I thought that a good first video to film would be my top books of 2024. I thought that this would be a good kind of introduction video because I think it'll give a really good idea of my reading taste, what I love in books, and yeah, so I have 12 books that I'm going to talk about. I'm not going to give like really in-depth synopsis because number one, I am terrible at it. And number two, I feel like that will just take way too long. So I'm going to give like a very brief synopsis and kind of like why I loved it. So I'm going to stop yapping, but yeah, let's get into the list. So the first book that I'm going to talk about is one that I, to this day, still think about daily. And that is The Sunshine Court by Nora Sakavic. This is the fourth book in the All for the Game series. I read the All for the Game series originally in 2020 when it was just a trilogy. And then Nora announced that the fourth book was coming out, which is a kind of spin-off following other characters that you meet. I believe in The Raven King, the second book, these characters are introduced. And so I reread the original trilogy and then read this one, and this series means everything to me. I absolutely adore it. Is it problematic? Yes. Is it kind of bad? Yes. Do I love it with my entire being? Also yes. So yeah, this couldn't not be on there. I adored this book. Well, this series in general is very it's very found family. It's exploring trauma. It's talking about how trauma kind of impacts your relationships. And there's also sports, kind of. The sports are there. They're not like the most relevant part of the plot, but the sports are there. So yeah, I adored this book. I cannot wait for the next two books. I originally thought this was just going to be like a duology spin-off, but it's actually going to be a trilogy, and I cannot wait. So yeah, Sunshine Court by Nora Sakavic. Okay, my next one is Delilah Green Doesn't Care by Ashley Herring Blake. This is a book that I put off for quite a long time. So I was really excited when it got announced because I love sapphic romances. But I feel like when it came out, I heard very mixed reviews. So I was kind of hesitant. And I got this in a Afterlight box. So I have like a pretty hardcover edition. But I was really kind of just put off from reading it. But I decided to just go for it this year and try it out. And I was obsessed with this book. This is, as I said, a sapphic romance. It is about a girl falling in love with her estranged stepsister's best friend. And it just I don't know, it just gave me like the best feelings when I was reading it. It just made me happy when I was reading it. And I have the rest of the series. I'm slightly scared to read the rest of the series just in case I don't love them as much as I loved this first book. But yeah, this book was fantastic. I would highly recommend, if you're looking for a really, really good sapphic romance, that you should pick this one up. So yeah, Delilah Green Doesn't Care. So this was actually my first 5-star book of the year. And this is If There's a Way by Jessie Walker. So this is the second book in a series, but the last book following this specific couple. I read the first book last year and adored it, and I loved the second one even more. This is a emotional, very character-driven romance. I think this book is criminally underrated. I never see anyone talk about this series, and I absolutely love it. I am going to be continuing with this series probably next year. I'm just scared for my heart because this duology made me sob. It made me feel so many things. So I'm a little bit nervous, but I am still really excited. This is about two boys who were friends when they were kids, and then something happened, which I'm not going to say what it is, but something happened. One of them ended up moving away. They haven't spoken in over a decade, and then he ends up coming back to that same town and they reconnect. And I said, it's very emotional. It's dark in the sense of the topics discussed are dark, but I wouldn't necessarily say that the relationship itself is super dark. But still, I would say check trigger warnings if this is something you want to read. But yeah, as I said, criminally underrated series. Do not see anyone talk about it, so I would highly recommend If There's a Way by Jessie Walker. Okay, so then I entered what I'm going to call my Rena Kent phase. So I tried to read Deviant King, I think it was, last year, and I was enjoying it, but I just wasn't in the right kind of headspace, right mindset for a darker romance, so I did put it down. And then I ended up reading God of Malice by Rena Kent, which is the first book in the Legacy of God series, randomly on a train to London this year, and it took over my entire brain. So I have binged the whole series. I read all 6 books that are currently out, and out of the 6, I gave 3 of them 5 stars, and 3 have ended up in my favourite of the year. So it is these 3. So it is God of Malice, God of Ruin, and God of Fury. God of Fury is like my number 1 in this series, but I love all 3 of these very dearly. These are dark kind of college romances. I'm not going to bother going into a synopsis because number 1, they all follow like different couples, but also I don't think I could give you a proper synopsis for this series if I tried, but it is college romance. It is definitely dark romance. So again, check your trigger warnings, especially for God of Malice. I think this one was definitely the darkest, but yeah, I adored all of these. This one follows Killian and Glyn. This is Landon and Mia, and this one is Brandon and Nikolai. I am just like other girls. This was my favorite book. I love this book. I think about Bran and Nikolai constantly. I read this book in like 24 hours as well. I could not put it down. They are everything to me. And I will be rereading this again very soon. So yeah, Rena Kent, Legacy of God series, absolutely fantastic. I will be reading a lot more Rena Kent next year. Okay, so next, this is probably my most basic favorite of the year, but I stand by it. I loved House of Flame and Shadow by Sarah J Maas. I know that this is kind of a, not controversial, but like a lot of fans of this series didn't love this book, which I understand. I completely understand why this was disappointing to a lot of people, why this wasn't exactly what they wanted from the series. I loved this book. I had so much fun reading this book. I think it also helped that I buddy read this book with 2 of my really good friends. So that was just a kind of like an extra fun experience. But I loved it. I had so much fun. I'm sure that everyone at this point knows Sarah J Maas, knows the Crescent City series, so I'm not going to bother going into it. But it was really fun. I liked the way that Hunt and Bryce's story wrapped up in here. I know that she's planning on writing other books in the series, but from different characters. And I think that this set up for that really well. I understand that there's plot holes. I understand that there's problems with this book. But again, I had a really good time. I love the Crescent City series. And this was a fantastic end for me personally. I get why it wasn't for others, but for me personally, absolutely loved this one. Next, I'm gonna go with another one that I think is kind of underrated, and this is Sorcery and Small Magics by Maiga Ducey, I think is how you say the author's name. This I got in my adult Fairy Loot subscription earlier in the year. I hadn't really heard anyone talk about this book. I think, you know, obviously it's just come out, but I read the synopsis of this book and this gave me Carry On, but for adults. And Carry On is one of my favorite books. I absolutely love it, and I adored this book. This book was like, it was cozy, it was funny, it was emotional, it was kind of everything I wanted in a fantasy book. This follows 2 boys who are at a kind of magical school and they are rivals. They never really get on and they end up working together in one of their classes, and one accidentally curses the other and they have to go on a journey to undo this curse. And I loved it so much. This book had me like giggling, kicking my feet kind of feelings. Like I could not put it down. When I wasn't reading it, I was thinking about it. And this is also a slow burn. I didn't know that going into it, so I was expecting the relationship to develop quicker, but I am obsessed with the slow burn and I need the second book right now. I need people to read this book because this book was fantastic. And as I said, I haven't seen anyone talking about it. I've seen people showing it because again, it was a Fairy Loot book, so I've seen people unboxing it, but I haven't seen anyone reading it. So I need people to read it so I can scream about it with them. The next book I'm going to talk about is the last kind of non-series that I have to talk about, in the sense of the last 2 things I'm talking about are multiple books in a series that I read this year that I gave 5 stars. This is the last one that's just 1 book. But that is The Mime Order by Samantha Shannon. Now, I've read the Bone season twice, actually. Both times intending to carry on with the series and read The Mime Order straight after. I never did. I think the last time I read the Bone season was maybe 2 years ago, And this year I decided it's finally time. I'm going to read them in order. I'm going to carry on with the series because the 5th book is coming out in January, I believe. And I loved this book so much. And I liked the Bone Season. I really enjoyed the Bone Season, but it was, to me, very clearly set up. Like, it was introducing the world and the way the kind of magic works and the politics and like all of that kind of stuff was being set up in the Bone Season. And this book was just the perfect continuation from that, because everything that was built in the Bone Season came to fruition in this. The series is really hard for me to describe. It's kind of, I would say it's like, it's a mix of like sci-fi, dystopian and fantasy, but we follow our main character Paige Mahoney, who is a clairvoyant, and clairvoyants are illegal in this world. And in the first book, she gets caught using her powers and she gets kidnapped to a secret location, and she finds out a lot of stuff about the world that is not known to the general public. And yeah, this follows on from that. I adore this series. This, I feel like more people should be reading. This book is so unique. It is so fun, but also really harrowing. I've cried multiple times reading this series. I adore the characters. I love Samantha Shannon's writing. I love the way that she builds worlds. And I cannot wait for book 5 when it comes out in January. So I'm just going to talk about the 2 series that I have been reading this year that I've given multiple 5 stars to. So the first one I'm going to talk about is, God, these books are fucking heavy, Zodiac Academy. So I read books 7, 8, 8.5 and 9 this year, but my 2 favorites, the 2 that I gave 5 stars, were books, which order are they in? Books 7 and 9. This series is another one of those series, like what I was saying with the All for the Game trilogy. This is not objectively a very good series. There's a lot of issues with it. The writing is kind of questionable, but I adore this series with my entire being. I read the first book in, I want to say 2021. I think it was 2021. And I've been kind of like slowly making my way through, because as you can see from the size of book 9, these books get huge. They are very easy, quick reads in the sense of the way that they're written. You just will fly through them. They're very addictive. This series, if you haven't heard about this series, it follows 2 twins who think they are human, but surprise, they're actually Fae royalty. And so they get transported to the world of the Fae. They attend this magical boarding school. And I just was obsessed with this series from book 1. I absolutely adore it, and I'm so happy that I finished this series this year, and I can't wait to go on and read these authors' other series. Okay, and the last books I'm going to talk about are my most current obsession. I just finished book 3, which I don't have on me, but I finished book 3 I think 2 days ago now, and I have not been able to stop thinking about it. I will be picking up book 4 immediately as soon as I can get my hands on a copy. But this is the Beasts of the Briar series by Elizabeth Helen. So I have books 1 and 2 here. This one is the beautiful Fairy Loot edition. This is just the standard UK hardcover. But when I tell you this series has altered my brain, I'm not exaggerating. I cannot stop thinking about these books. I'm just obsessed. I am so obsessed with them. This is a reverse harem poly Beauty and the Beast retelling. So you have our main girlie, who is right here, and 4 Fae princes who have all been cursed. And in order to break their curses, they need to find their mates. I'm sure you can imagine where it's going. I love everything about this series. I love the characters, I love the plot, I love the world, I love the relationships. It is very smutty, I will give that as a kind of like little disclaimer. So if you're not into super smutty romantasy, then this probably isn't the series for you. If you like your smut and you haven't picked this up, fix it immediately. I finished book 3 at like 1 a.m. and I literally was like, wanted to scream into my book and throw it across the room. It's fantastic. So yeah, this is the last series I'm going to talk about. I absolutely adored these, as I did with all the books. But yeah, those are my favorite books of 2024. I'm planning on making another video, which is my top books to read next year in 2025. And I also think I might make an anticipated releases video. So if you enjoyed this in any capacity, if you enjoyed my weird, awkward rambling, then please do consider subscribing. Yeah, hopefully I will see you in some other videos, hopefully soon. And yeah, bye.